This is Professor Pete Alexander with the Winning at Business and Life podcast, where business leaders share their interests. It is 6 questions in 7 minutes because successful business leaders are busy and rarely have more time to spare. So let's get to it. Question number one. In a few sentences, please tell me who you are and what you do.
I'm Richard Depila. I am the founder of Global Goodwill Ambassadors and the co-founder of Global Goodwill Ambassadors Foundation.
Well, Richard, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show and an honor to be a member of your great organization. So thank you for being on the show. Question number two. What is something that makes you smile and or laugh about working in your industry?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that I actually look for content that to put out that makes me smile. So I find things that some of the great things that people are doing or that you find in nature that is just heartwarming and brings a smile to my face. And I feel like, well, if it does that for me, I'm going to share that. So a lot of my content that I share right now is just basically to make people feel good.
And I would agree 100%. In fact, the one that I saw this morning about the two cats keeping themselves warm while they were walking was just a really heartwarming one to see. So thank you for sharing that and all the other videos that you share. Question number three. I have a fictitious book with all the answers for business. What chapter would you think most companies should read?
Okay, so it has all the key elements that you need in order to be
hmm
successful in business.
hmm
Well, there's an obvious answer to me. It would be to obviously read the entire thing,
hmm
but I think that whatever chapter in there would describe the challenges that you'll inevitably confront, that would be the chapter that I'd recommend and probably read over and over again.
I think that's really wise because obviously, when we can persevere over the challenges, then we're going to set ourselves up much more for success. So I think that's very wise. Thank you. Question number four. Other than the generic work harder, have a great attitude, and care for customers, what advice or insight would you give to other business leaders?
Well, definitely building relationships is something that I think social media plays such a key role right now in what people have done in business, and the same lessons that people have learned in business about building relationships prior to anything else is definitely something that I've noticed doesn't exist on social media in a lot of cases. People will just automatically in the first message they send to you say, "Are you interested in my product?" And like, I feel like, well, if I were, I'd probably want to know a little more about you, who I'm talking to. Are you somebody that's trustworthy? Are you a real person? What is your background? So I definitely think that relationship building is something that should be fostered on in business in general, as it typically is, and definitely on social media that is taken over right now for a lot of lead generation for people.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more. I can't tell you how many times I have received direct messages on the social media networks where clearly they haven't even looked at my profile. They are just, as you said, just going right for the sale right off the bat, and there's no rapport whatsoever, no relationship building, and it makes me wonder, is this the kind of person who would, if you were to meet right on, on a busy street, would they just immediately go into selling you? And it just, who buys from that? I mean, is that, it just doesn't seem like it's a viable way of going when building the relationship. What I have found in my experience, and it sounds like the same with you, that you have this relationship with somebody, people buy from people, and you have to have that rapport. You have to have that trust established. Am I reading you correctly?
You are, and you made a great point. I was when you said, I wonder if they would do that on the street. I believe that if people did that or thought about that, they would realize how wrong it is. It comes across really aggressive. It comes across not warm in any way, and it certainly doesn't do anything to foster an initial relationship building um, word or phrase or way to get things started. I don't think people would act that way in public. I just think it's something that maybe they're under the premise that you just hit people right away and find out who is interested, so you can move on to the next person. I hope that's not the case, because I think they're probably leaving a lot on the table.
I would agree 100%. And I hope some of these people who have practiced that in the past get to listen to this podcast and realize it's not working. Do something better to connect with your audience. So, very, very
Yeah.
wise words. Thank you so much. Question number 5. What other business leader like yourself would you like to acknowledge and invite to be on my podcast?
Well, definitely without any doubt, because I could not survive without my president. I'd recommend Lisa Jones. Um, she is not only the president, the COO, she is the dean of our Learning Institute. Um, she is like a one person can get it all done, fearless and strong woman leader, and certainly somebody that I have. It's not only a friend of mine now, but also somebody that I have total faith in, uh, that she could do anything she puts her mind and heart into. So I would certainly recommend her, because I think that she would be a great person to have on your podcast.
I couldn't agree more. I think the world of Lisa as well. So I'll reach out to her and say, you suggested it. So hopefully we'll get her on the show. And our final question number 6. Please tell me about your first job.
My first job, ah, like I had a lot of jobs when I was really young, um, and probably the one that had the most impact on me was being a paper boy. What I liked about it was that my paper route was in my neighborhood, and I was from, even though it was on the outskirts of Philadelphia, it was a South Jersey town. The town itself was someplace that you kind of knew everybody, or knew a lot about them, but the chance to interact with neighbors, and just a lot of other fun things about it. I mean, I remember trying to perfect the perfect fold and the perfect throw to see if I could skip it up onto the step, um, and then learning things about the right way to do collections, and also the discipline that people count on getting their paper at a certain time, so you have to keep a good timetable. I really can't. I don't know that job exists anymore, other than maybe in really rural communities. But I can't think of a better job for a young person to do than something like that.
It's interesting as you were describing it because that was my first job as well. And, I remember thinking about the same things, how to do the perfect throw, how
Right.
to, collect. It was always a challenge to get the right collections because you had to pick up checks from the customers, et cetera. But what you probably get a kick out of this, though, I usually have to describe for our younger listeners that a paperboy was basically delivering printed web pages so that they understood what that was.
I didn't exactly. I know there's still community newspapers, that are very good in communities. I'm just not sure how they're delivered, if it's direct mail now, or if they still have paperboy deliverers, and I guess paper person would be the new correct term to use, because
Hmm.
I believe it could be a great experience, for anybody, and if not that job, something similar to where you were actually getting the discipline, that because if you I assume that you also did this from what you said, and you realize how many disciplines are learned in jobs that are menial by the standards of how high up on the food chain, in the job world, but that the amount of education that you get in a job like that is just, it's priceless.
Absolutely. And how do you have an appreciation for, as you say, the really the I don't want to call it low level jobs, but the jobs that are actually required in order for the organization to be successful. And for me, whether it was a paper boy, whether it was being uh, dishwasher, whether I worked retail, those jobs taught me so much about interacting with the people that I work with, what has to get done, discipline, as you say, making sure to get there on time, get the work done. And it for me, it was a wonderful learning experience. And most every job that I had as I was going through my career, I took the lessons that I learned and was able to apply them to future opportunities.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So it's definitely, whether it's a paperboy or with something like that, take that first job and learn. That's a great lesson. And Richard, thank you so much for being on the show. How could
Well, it's
people
my
find
pleasure.
you? Oh, it's been my pleasure too. How could people find you?
Well, most of the information would be best on our website, which would be www.globalgoodwillambassadors.com. We have educational classes. We are all volunteers and a nonprofit, very unique in that way, and that there's nobody getting any money out of our organization. We are international. We have a great magazine we put out each month that gives the impact of the organization. It's free for to sign up for that on the website. So I highly recommend that. Or anybody that's interested in being a part of the organization, it was built to unify people, to get to know people from all over the world. We're in 215 nations and territories with approximately 18,000 people, and they interact on a regular basis in all sorts of groups on social media, and come up with really a lot of the initiatives that we represent, and we do. We try to help out with the people in those communities. So I definitely encourage people to look at our website and see if you want to be part of it.
Wonderful, and you're doing a fabulous job. Again, it's been such an honor to have you on the show. And this is Professor Pete Alexander with the Winning at Business and Life podcast. Get hundreds of amazing business insights from previous guest episodes on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening.